Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nikki LaRose. Summer's here and I thought this would be the perfect time to show you all how and where to apply a powder bronzer. So if you're one of many people that find it hard to apply bronzer or don't really know where to put it on their face, like as far as placement goes or what kind of tools to use, this video is for you. And so let's get right into it. I already have my foundation on, my concealer's on. I don't have any blush. You can see I clearly don't have any eye makeup on. I'll actually be filming an eye makeup tutorial right after this one, so I'll be leaving that blank. But anyway, let's get right into it. And for this look, I was digging through all my bronzers, like my powder bronzers, and I had a really hard time figuring out which bronzer I was going to choose for this video because I feel like I just have so many favorites. But my current favorite right now, and I actually posted a video using this bronzer on my Instagram and my TikTok. This is the matte bronzer in Cabo from Girlactik. And this bronzer has just been like my daily go-to since I got it. I got it from the brand. They were nice enough to give it to me and I've been like hooked on this bronzer. So I thought, why not show you guys how to apply bronzer with one of my current favorites. Okay, so before we put on the actual powder bronzer, I wanna talk about how important it is to start with a prepped and set base. So I already have my foundation on and my concealer like I mentioned, but I didn't powder my whole face. I powdered my under eye and that was it. So one tip that I highly suggest you utilize is to make sure that if you're wearing a liquid foundation and concealer and all those things, that you're thoroughly, or at least powdering down somewhat your face before you go in with a powder bronzer. And the reason why is because if you just go in straight with a powder bronzer, unless you have a lot of makeup skill with blending it on and making sure it's going on nice and smooth, it can look really, it could grip onto wet areas and start to skip, and it could start to look kind of patchy or even kind of muddy, and you won't get a smooth application. So tip number one and first step in this whole process is just to make sure that you're setting your face makeup before you go in with your powder bronzer. So for that, I'll be using the Chanel loose powder. This is just a translucent powder, and taking a fluffy brush. So I'm gonna focus this loose powder on all the areas that I plan on applying my bronzer. So it's gonna be the top of my forehead. And it doesn't have to be a ton of powder, you know, just a light wash of it is really all you need. Just so when you go in with that powder bronzer, it's gonna glide on nice and smooth. Sides of my cheeks. I'm extra glowy right now because I have a very glowy sunscreen on underneath my face makeup, and I applied it at least like 2 hours ago at this point, so it's like definitely like popping through. And then on top of it, I do have like slightly oily skin, so if I look really shiny, that's probably why. I just did like a nice wash of this powder all over my skin. So now that we are set, we can go in with our powder bronzer. And if you follow me on Instagram and you happen to see the video that I posted talking about this bronzer, I mentioned in it that I like this formula so much because I actually was able to apply this on top of like makeup that was like considered wet and not set, and it glided on so smooth and so like foolproof. So that's one of the reasons why this has been like one of my favorites, and I have not been able to put it down like every single day. Okay, so these are the kind of brushes in both size, shape, and density that I recommend for a powder bronzer application. This one being the biggest one. This one's from MAC. It's a 159 brush. I believe they still carry this one. If it's discontinued, let me know. But anything along this size is going to give you a really natural wash of color because it's so fluffy, it's so big. So it's not gonna deposit a whole ton of powder bronzer in one spot like it will, but it's going to blend and give it a really natural finish because it is such a large, loosely packed, fluffy brush. So I love a brush like this. But my two favorites and my two go-tos for both like my makeup kit and for myself when I'm applying a powder bronzer are these guys. This one is from Japonesque. NARS actually had a brush look just like this one as well, but Japonesque still sells this brush. It's a great, great powder brush, but I love it especially for powder bronzer because it's big enough where I can get in there and I can cover a lot of ground like my forehead or the sides of my cheeks. But also you can kind of pat it in too and like lay it flat, and it lays really nicely on the face. And it's of course great for blending as well. This one has been my new favorite. This one's from the Makeup by Ariel brush collaboration with Morphe. This does come in that full set of makeup brushes, but this one is just, it's so soft, it's rounded, it buffs it on, it gives you like a really nice natural finish with your powder products. So I'm gonna actually show you how to apply the bronzer with this guy. Okay, so let's finally apply our powder bronzer. I'm going to dip into that Cabo bronzer. I'm gonna get a good amount on my brush and then always tap off the excess. I'm gonna get the top of my forehead. So what you wanna think about when you're applying a powder bronzer is where the sun would naturally hit you and give you a golden, tan, sun-kissed kind of look. And kind of start at an angle, just kind of swiping down and out. You can also tap it into if you want like a little more color payoff. I like to tap it in around the hairline. So what I want to do is do one side of my face and leave the other side bare so you can really see the impact of applying a bronzer properly. And the area that you want to avoid the most with powder bronzer is going too far down your forehead. So if I brought this powder bronzer anywhere further down from here down to my brows, what it would do is it would shorten my forehead just way too much. And some people like that if that's a good like contouring trick, for example. Like if you want to shorten your forehead and make it look a little smaller, more petite, then you would use a contour shade to bring it down and kind of cast a shadow and shade it down. But with bronzer, if you go too low, it just ends up looking like you're wearing the wrong color foundation. So you don't want to do that. You want to avoid that. So keep it high up. Make sure you're blending it into your hairline, because the last thing you want is to see a white hairline and then your bronzer and then your hair in between. So you don't want to have that gap. So buffing it in so there's no white hairline. And that way you don't see where it starts and stops. Moving on to my cheek. A lot of people think that, bronzer should be placed underneath the cheekbone, but that's where you want to apply your contour. Now, you can apply your bronzer in this area, but it doesn't have to be in such a specific, harsh spot. I want you to think more like softly hitting the whole side of your face where the sun would naturally hit you, like I mentioned earlier, and give you that like warm sun-kissed kind of look. So I'm gonna focus my bronzer on the high point of the side of my face and then bringing it down my neck. And just kind of tapping it all onto my cheek area. So not underneath my cheek, not only on my cheekbone, but this whole general area. And you wanna get it far back towards your ear so it's nice and blended. It's the same idea of what we had up here where we blended it into the hairline. Same idea goes for the side of our cheek. You don't want to have like a white gap where you don't have the bronzer and you see like that disconnected look with makeup. You don't want that. With whatever's left over, I'm going to just tap a little bit onto my temple, because again, this might feel weird applying in this spot, but again, you want to think in terms of where the sun would naturally hit your face, and that's going to be the side of your face and all of the high points. This area is one of the high points, and it is an area that gets a lot of sun. But more importantly, it's just more flattering to wear bronzer where you don't see any gaps in between where it starts and where it stops. It's just a really natural blend where it kind of just melts into each other and there's no harsh lines. So now moving on to the lower half of my face. And what I wanna do is just bring this bronzer straight down the side of my neck. So this is gonna give us a really cohesive look to our bronzer. And that way it's not like you have this beautiful bronzed face, but then your neck and your chest are just lacking in that bronze sun-kissed department. So the best way to blend it so it really looks natural is to take it straight down the side of your neck. And from there, you can kind of dust back from your collarbone. So bring it straight down and then dusting whatever's left over on the top of your collarbone where you would get some nice natural sun because it is a high point of your chest, right? Now you can hit the top of your chin. I don't typically love it in that spot, but just for the sake of this video, it is a semi-high point of our face, so you could dust just a little bit. And you wouldn't go underneath because that's a contour spot. That is not a spot for bronzer. So just on the top of your chin, and that's it. So to wrap up this side of the face, another spot that I love to bronze that I highly suggest you utilize is across your nose. And the reason for that is the same reason why we apply bronzer in all those other places. It's a high point of our face. It's actually a major high point of our face when you think about it. Not only is it in the center of our face, it's a high point because we have a bridge of our nose, right? And when you go outside and you go to the beach, don't you always get kind of a sun-kissed, like a little red on your nose? It's the same idea. So to make it really natural, we're gonna take a little bit of that bronzer. I'm just going to sweep it across my nose. Just really light-handed. I'm not applying too much pressure. And I like to focus it like strictly on the bridge of my nose and then sweep gently whatever's left over just to kind of connect the dots so it doesn't look disjointed. We want to be nice and cohesive, just like the rest of the areas of our face. With whatever's left over, I'm just sweeping it gently across the highest point of my cheek. So right there. And that's the easiest, quickest, most foolproof way to get a cohesive sun-kissed bronzer look. So I just finished my bronzer on this side. I am nice and even. I'm ready to go hit the beach, or at least I now look like I just hit the beach, which is the whole point of applying a bronzer. If you guys like this tutorial, make sure you leave me a comment, or if you have any questions, leave me a comment below and I'll make sure I get back to you. If you like tutorials like this, I have so many more where this came from, so don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.